Hi, everybody. I'm Helena Varenko, and this is Code the State. This podcast is about how governments change in the digital age and about people building that change. Code the State was inspired by Women in GovTech Challenge, a global initiative where women from different countries build working prototypes of digital public services for their countries. Participants in the challenge work with GovTech experts who help them turn ideas into functioning services. And that's exactly what we want to talk about here. So, today we're launching a special series called Women in GovTech. And today we're talking to those who are right in the middle of it. Tuntufye Ntaukira leads digital governance at the United Nations Development Program in Malawi and has been working in digital transformation for more than 11 years. She's one of the mentors in the challenge. Welcome, Tuntufye. Oleksandr Iefremov is the CEO of Kitsoft, a GovTech company whose team trains challenge participants to build those prototypes using Kitsoft's low-code platform Liquio. Oleksandr, welcome to you too. Okay, let's start our conversation with something personal. Tuntufye, how did you get into digital governance in the first place? And when do you find that this kind of work could really change people's lives?
Right. Thank you very much, Helen. Well, mine is it's a story, an interesting one. I began my career in rule of law for about 2 years or so, and then I went into digital health. I think that's where I spent most of my career in building digital health solutions in for not just the urban areas but also rural areas. And then uh, came this position at UNDP, which I wasn't sure of. I remember when I saw the 2 hours, the only thing I could recognize was work on digital ID and CRVS, as civil registration and vital statistics. So, because in my digital health work, part of the solutions that I implemented were in the CRVS, that's birth registration and death registration systems. I was like, this is familiar to me, so I'm just gonna go ahead and apply. And when I started this role, it was amazing to see the amount of work that UNDP had achieved thus far, and that's in supporting the implementation of the national ID through the National Registration Bureau. Um, and the amount of savings that the government has had in the past years using this digital ID, and also the potential savings that they were looking at in the government, things like payroll, ghost workers, and pension, and so forth. And apart from that, there was also work where there were projects rather where the digital ID, the ID was linked to this program called Affordable Inputs Program, which is a subsidy program for inputs for farmers. And through this linkage, there was also huge amounts of savings because the right um, subsidies or the right benefits were going to the right people. Apart from that, this was also being used in other social protection programs. So just seeing that kind of impact, ensuring that the right support is going to the right people, that's what has been encouraging to me to even delve more into ensuring that there is good digital governance and strengthened digital governance within the government system.
Thanks, Tuntufye. That's a very noble goal, and I'm sure that your path has been very rocky sometimes because, let's be honest, government technology and all around it, it's not the easiest place to work. And same question to you, Oleksandr. Kitsoft, as a company, has been building digital systems for governments for years. And can you please share what keeps you in this space?
What keeps us in this space is also impact. When you build technology for governments, you are not just launching another portal or another application. You are improving lives of millions of people. And these people expect comfortable, nice services from the state, and because they have other digital experience, probably with digital banks, with transportation services. But for governments, it's sometimes not the case. Like, we have very outdated interfaces to collaborate with governments, and this is how we came in this situation where we see the high potential of projects in governmental user experience improvement. And we started actually with user experience improvement of existing services. And the governmental technologies are not the easiest environment. Regulations are very complex. Systems are legacy. So at some point of time, we saw that there is a lack of good business analysts in this area, lack of good technologies in this area. And we started to improve our internal expertise. And we saw very clear that DIA portal, we became part of DIA's ecosystem 5 years ago when it started in Ukraine. It is a very huge solution that helped a lot of citizens to communicate easier with government. And throughout the war, it simplified communication between business, government, and citizens. So we see that the digital services that we created throughout this project are really make change. And they help reduce bureaucracy, increase transparency, and make people's life easier. So I think it's the biggest motivation to stay in this space.
That's so true. And also thinking about how all of this knowledge also has to be guided, you probably were thinking about creating your own expertise about business analysts and more, because this is something that is very specific not only to the governments, but to the whole industry of low code as it is. And so, about the challenge, about mentoring and participants, it would probably be a good segue to talk now about how the challenge works, and specifically to you, Tuntufye, because you're mentoring participants of the Women in GovTech Challenge. Could you please explain to somebody who is going to hear for the first time about the challenge, how does it work? What does it actually is, and what happens inside of the program?
All right. Simply put, I would say this is like brilliant women that have been brought together to come up with bold ideas that you can see move from talking about the challenge and actually conceptualizing it and building prototypes. The tools that are made available, the technical resources that given to these women that are building these prototypes is it's something that I would say is helping to ensure that these prototypes that are being built actually are impactful. Because the challenge in the real world is that sometimes you find that we could have brilliant ideas, brilliant solutions, and maybe not have the right kind of tools to come up with the actual digital systems, and sometimes we might not even have the right kind of support from other people from different domains. But then this challenge ensures that at the end of the day, when a product is built, it's built from different sets of expertise, and it's a product that actually brings impact to our communities.
Thanks, Tuntufye. From my point of view, it's also very important that the tools that they're using, they're also used in the real life government services. And once again, to Oleksandr, from your side, what do you think is the best part of the participants being able to access those kind of tools, and how does it look technically? Could you please also maybe explain what kind of role does your team from Kitsoft play in helping participants build those prototypes?
Yeah, sure. We created a platform called Liquio. It's a low-code, no-code platform that could support governments in the digitalizing of public services. And this platform is already published open source. So right now we are part of the challenge in the role of supporting this platform. And this platform is used by all the participants to prototype actual services. So first of all is deployment and support of the platform that is functioning throughout the whole challenge. The second is our mentoring role to help all participants to onboard on Liquio to understand its functionality. And it could be divided on two parts. First, took role of business analysts in this project, and we show them how this services could be better created, designed, and how to structure it in terms of requirements for the platform, how to put it on the platform. And the second role is role of local developers that also participants took this role and created actual services on the platform. So we gave them this tooling, how to create services, how they can easily prototype it, and then publish it to test it in a real environment. I mean, a test environment, but they looks real. And this is something that they can take out of this challenge and show their work to others or even launch it. Yeah, why not? Because this platform is open source. It can be even deployed on the premises of actual government that the participants working in and used for real world services, because this gap from prototyping to launch is not so big if you already have a lot of features implemented as part of prototype.
Fantastic. Thank you, Oleksandr. Tuntufye, as a mentor, could you please share if there have been any ideas or projects from participants that really stood out to you so far?
Yeah, so one of the ideas that was shared, which one of the groups is currently working on, is something that I could relate to because it was speaking to the challenges that most of the developing countries face, and that is access to information and access to facilities in terms of health. And this particular one is where they're looking at maternity facilities where mothers are able to once they go for their first visit. The challenge is that one, they have to have a physical book where they record their everyday or they record their visit. And the first challenge with this one is that it's a physical book. Sometimes it gets torn, sometimes it can get lost. And so, in the long run, you do not have your health history during the time that you're pregnant, which will hinder the right kind of support that you can get from a health care or health worker. The second one is that for these maternity visits, this is the second challenge. For these maternity visits, they need to go periodically during the time of pregnancy, and they may not be able to keep track of the dates or even get the right kind of information that they need, maybe the right kind of supplements that they need to take, as an example. And so, because of that, you find that most mothers, because of that lack of information, they may not be able to receive the right kind of care. And then also at birth, when they give birth, rather, the child would also need to get immunized and also be registered, which is important in the right to the child for identity. But you will find that because of one lack of this information, they're unable to do all of that. And the proposed solution was ensuring that using the little resources that are there, for example, in the rural areas, people will most likely have a feature phone. They won't have a smartphone where if you build it in an app for them, they will not use it, or they will not have the right kind of literacy skills to access those apps. So this is a solution that is also looking at somebody or a mother in the rural area who can receive information on their feature phone using SMSs, receive reminders of subsequent hospital visits, and also if their child, after the child is born, they need to get immunized at the right time, they can get SMSs on their phone. So Again, this stood out for me because in my country, almost 80% of the population is in the rural areas, which means that this is a problem that is affecting most of the Malawians, and also women. The number of women, or the percentage, is like over 53% of Malawians are women. So you could see the magnitude of this challenge.
Thank you, Tuntufye. And of course, the service like that, it makes sense for a country like Malawi. And now I'm thinking about what would be the next step after the prototyping. Oleksandr, from your experience, could you please share what would it take for a service like that to move beyond the prototype and become a real public service?
I just want to highlight the surprising similarity with Ukraine, because our first service that we launched in DIA was service of registration of newborn babies, and it was a complex service that integrated a lot of different ones, integrated a lot of information, very similar to what Tuntufye just shared. And so different countries, but the same priorities, the same first service. Yeah, so we, regarding prototypes, prototypes are a very powerful way to test ideas quickly and see what actually works before governments invest in full implementation. Prototype demonstrates real value, meaning the service solves a concrete problem for citizen or for institution. It can become the starting point for a production system with platforms like Liquio. Transition from prototype to a real service could be relatively smooth, because the same architecture and components can be reused in scale. Of course, you need to invest a lot of efforts in deployment, in training of personnel. It's a huge amount of work, but at least you have something that you can anchor on, and you can then improve and integrate all the necessary solution in practice. So many successful digital public services actually started with small pilots and prototypes, then evolved in bigger system, and even this bigger system were launched through so-called beta testing phase, where you see the impact, but in control way you control everything that is going on, and you can improve and fix something, and then you launch full scale. So it's just another step in the overall roadmap of launching a digital service. The key is to move from experimentation to implementation in a structured way, I would say.
Yes, I completely agree. And by the way, also when people hear something about government digitalization, they often imagine like big websites and multiple online forms, when in reality, just a small service that hits a lot of marks, checks a lot of check boxes, like having a baby, which is a pretty much common life event, would be a very turning point for each government. And so when a country actually gets digital government right, what really changes in people's everyday life, in your opinion, Alexander?
I think it's about building trust, because when you saw outdated government with like legacy technologies, you need to have appointments to stand in the queues and all this stuff. And this thing became very deeply connected with the governmental perception, right? In all countries. And when you start building something new that is very different, and people starting to get help, and they face with the super cool interfaces with new approaches, and they get results, they get service. I think this makes changes for them. And if you build it around some new brand like Dia in Ukraine, you get more positive feedbacks, you get more trust, and then it pays out. So when you launch new service, you need much less investment. When you already build this vehicle that is trusted, you can launch new services in it very fast and without so big marketing efforts. Like right now is happening in Ukraine, we're launching around 10 services per month, and it became the routine. And it's fantastic because you have these tools, and a lot of small teams could work in parallel, and each team implement their own services. They don't interfere, and this is something that really pays out. After 5 years, I'm proud to say that we are here, and we also would like to share this expertise with all the world, because it's a challenge to change this perception of government from very old school, outdated structure to service structure. That is what is happening right now in Ukraine.
Code the state.
So when you see the transformation up close from early digital systems to the national strategy level, you can see how small point get bigger and bigger scale with each service, probably with each year on the run. And so, Tuntufye, you currently work on Malawi's national digital strategy, also similar big effort. Could you please explain to us how does a process like that actually works in practice in Malawi? Who's in the room, and how do you get such different groups like private sector, civil society, and last but not least, government to agree on a shared direction?
So this process has been an interesting one because it has seen two different governments. We recently had elections. That was last year in September, and that saw a change in government, in leadership. So with a totally different vision. But I'll just explain a little bit of how we started. We first did a digital readiness assessment in 2024, which was launched last year, sometime in May. So the digital readiness assessment is a UNDP framework that assesses a country's readiness, and it assesses several 5 pillars. Yeah. So it looks at regulation, it looks at DPI, looks at people in terms of skills, literacy, it looks at the economy, and also infrastructure. So it assesses all of these pillars, and the outcome of this report showed where Malawi stands in terms of digital transformation. And some of the statistics were interesting. When you look at literacy levels in Malawi, they were, I think, percentage is over, I think, over a little over 30%. And this is just literacy, not digital literacy. But on infrastructure, we're doing great as a country because there's a lot of investments being done in that area. And in terms of DPI, for the Digital ID Foundation, we are great because we have a robust digital ID system that is near universal coverage. That's over 13 million people of Malawians from 16 years and above are registered or have a national ID. From the findings of the digital readiness assessment, or DRA, this fell into this strategy that we're working on with the government. The strategy process, first of all, we had to ensure that it's owned by the government, that it's not UNDP driving it, but rather it's being taken up by the government, and that we are there to offer technical support. So we had to ensure that even like little things like invitations to the stakeholders had to come from the government. And it brought together over 100 people, maybe up to 200 people. And Malawi is divided in geographical regions. So there are 3 regions, and we did these consultations in all the 3 regions. And after that, in the consultations, we had private sector, government, CSOs. We also had the media and also development partners. So we pretty much covered everyone, including academia. And after these consultations, we had to do bilateral consultations. So here we looked at the key people within the industry. So I also have to point out that we are working on 2 strategies at once: the digital transformation strategy and the AI strategy. The AI strategy has also taken a similar process where we did an AI landscape assessment from last year to this year. So we're looking at expertise within the country in terms of AI, like which people are in that AI domain, and also for digital transformation, we're looking at which people are key. We're looking at sectoral, like priority sectors. Rather, for example, agriculture, mining, and all of that. So we had to ensure that we had meetings with all of these, including in the private sector. Apart from that, we wanted to do something different, because normally the strategies, when they're doing consultations, it ends at workshops. So what we did differently this year was we developed a portal. This is a citizens engagement portal. We with support from our project, of course, because we have a digital team. And this citizen engagement portal allows any citizen who has access to a device to take a survey. So there are a set of questions that can be answered. And then there is also another part where they are able to create a persona. For example, if I am a farmer in the rural area, I have to give all those details that I'm a farmer in the rural area, and these are the challenges I have. Maybe challenges with connectivity, or I don't have an access to a device, as an example, or I don't have access to digital information on the digital platforms and so forth. So I will share those challenges, and then from there also create what I would want my digital future to look like, what would make my digital journey different. And so these personas capture the real challenges that people are facing in the different sectors, but also gives us an idea of what is important or what would be meaningful to a citizen, to any citizen in the country. So that is where the process is at. So at the moment, we are still in progress of development. We have consolidated all the information and are looking at releasing the second draft now.
Fantastic news. Thank you so much, Tuntufye. So if you probably had to explain from the story of one citizen rather than policy language, the benefits of having all together the digital identity, the e-wallet, the access to the services in rural areas, what kind of story would you tell, and whose story that would be? How their life would be better if we had everything in place already?
Okay, so let me tell a story of a farmer who's also a business person, because they have to sell their produce. What would make them better is, first of all, they have a digital ID, and being in the rural area, they may not have stable connectivity. And so in Malawi, apart from the physical card that we also have other forms of credentials. I just want to give that context first. We have all other forms of credentials where if you don't have a physical card, you can use a digitally signed QR code printed on a paper, which can only be read by specific devices, of course, like configured devices, not by any other devices. Also, we're working on a digital wallet, an ID that you can have in your phone, and again, working towards having it as a digital wallet with other forms of credentials. We're currently in the pilot phase. But let's take it back to the farmer who has, let's say they have a smartphone, and they're able to identify themselves where they want, first of all, to access information about the weather, when they should start planting, and also if they could get soil data. Let's say, for example, there are tools on soil data in Malawi, advising on which plants they can, or which crops they can plant. So as a farmer, I should be able to have access to all of this and be able to make an informed decision. And at the same time, if I can have access to a marketplace where after I have harvested huge amounts of rice, as an example, I'll be able to sell to identify maybe buyers on the market, whether they're buying in bulk or they are buying maybe one bag and so forth. And also, I should be able to see competitive prices on that marketplace. But also, a further step from that, let's say I've identified a buyer, then if we need to do transactions, I don't need to now go to the bank to, let's say they are paid for the produce. I don't need to go to the bank to withdraw, or I don't need to physically meet the person to get the cash. Rather, we can just do transactions online and I can make payments for whatever I want online. So that is how I would explain the farmer.
Got it. Yes, absolutely. Also, Alexander, listening to this from Ukrainian side, what similarities did you see and what feels very different because of the ideas that Tuntufye gave us regarding the digital readiness assessment?
Every time you implement some solution for a big country, you face very similar problems in terms of that each organization, each governmental entity have their own rules, have their own boundaries, have their own registries, and they are sometimes isolated and do not interact. In Ukraine, of course, we had much more digitalized society on the start of a project, and we had a lot of applications. So we use online banking. We used a lot of other applications, mostly in cities, but also some of them in rural areas. But the challenge was to cover people with digital identity because it was implemented, but it was not scaled through all the country. So it was the big challenge to give the people idea that they should use, how they can use digital identity. And in Ukraine, digital identity is built on PKI infrastructure. And it's asymmetric keys, basically, cryptographic keys. But people, even though businesses understood why it is needed, regular citizens sometimes didn't understand why they need this key. And this is like another two sides of the medal. When you launch services, you give the citizen understanding why they need digital identity, because digital identity itself is not so valuable, but when it comes to services, this is what make change. And with digital identity, they can use services and they can get instant help. For example, we had a lot of different governmental address help for farmers, including grants, including subsidies, and you have this also in Dia, and you can apply for grant, you can get financial support, and this is something that really changed their lives and their attitude towards government. I think that the hard part is to build this ecosystem so different actors can interact, and the platform itself, I'm also referring to Dia and Liquio as a solution that Dia is built on, as helping different governmental authorities to build the same language, to build the same foundation, how they can interact. In Ukraine, we use a solution called Trimbita, which is basically very similar to Xroad. It's a kind of fork of Xroad. And this is how we integrated different governmental registries. And Dia is connected to this Trimbita platform. So having this architecture, you can build services that are keeping citizen in the center. Because obviously you need to change mindset of people that creating services so they can build services citizen-centered, not governmental entity-centered. and you need to build services that interact with different registries and integrate all the information in one service and just give a result to people. So this is what they need, and this was the big challenge for our country, how to make this mind shift in all governmental official minds so they can start thinking citizen-centric, not governmental official-centric.
That's a very good insight. Would it be fair to say that that was the hardest part of making the ecosystem work, or was it something else as well?
Building trust for people and make this change in governmental official minds was the two biggest challenges. So I think technology comes next, because you should always build technologies making all this, keeping all this in mind. And we see right now that a lot of other countries have the same problems. Yeah, so they also have faced the challenges of siloed digitalization, the problems of very long and expensive governmental projects. You want to keep it easier, you want to keep it shorter and less expensive, and the problem of different legacy system that sometimes exist. And if you solve all this problem that potentially our platform could solve, like TIA, for example, you can really build digital government and digital society.
And so, Tuntufye, I would like to ask you now, what do you think are real risks governments, especially in your case, Malawi, should be thinking about when they build those systems? And how can you be sure of the digital identity design that actually protects people's rights?
So the first thing is what has been mentioned is building trust. I will just give you an example. We had a pilot project in one of the districts where we had integrated the national ID system to an electronic medical record system. And this was done to ensure that the right people were identified and given the right kind of care. One, two, to address the issue of data discrepancy. In the records, in the health records, there were a lot of duplicate records. So sometimes you'd find one person has maybe different records, just maybe different names and so forth. And so this integration was done to solve the problems from on different layers. But what happened, what we expected and what actually happened on the ground was totally different. There was no uptick from the beginning. Or we wanted people to bring their IDs to the facilities when they're coming for maybe routine care or to access any services. But it was tough to get people to come, and it was also tougher to get the hospital workers or the health workers to actually use the system because they did not, for some reason, they did not understand or they didn't see the essence. But also within the health care system, and this is an issue that's that's prevalent in most of the government institutions, where within the inefficiencies, there's some, I want to say quote unquote businesses that thrive. Okay, personal gains or personal benefits that people get in, like within the inefficiencies that are in the system. And so when you bring in something that's sort of going to affect their personal gains, it's shunned upon. So from the people side, from the citizen side, what we saw was that lack of trust. And so what we had to do afterwards was now conduct activities to ensure that we build people trust, to ensure that people understand why we are asking them to bring the ID to the hospitals, because there are so many fallacies, so many conspiracies going around, some of them even religious, so we had to go to the communities to meet with the leaders, community leaders. In some communities are called gatekeepers. So it could be religious leaders, it could be like traditional leaders and so forth. So we had to meet with them to explain to them. So essentially to just build trust. And because the people in the communities trust their leaders, it was easy to bring them on board. So after this behavioral change exercise, we saw an increase in the adoption. And right now, we have a lot of people coming to the hospitals with their ID. So it had to take deliberate efforts to meet people at their level and to explain to them why. We cannot assume that a solution that we're bringing to the people will just be received, or we think we're solving their problem. Sometimes we may not, or they may not understand it. But now on the other side, on the government side, this is common, like I said, where you build a digital solution or you advise government to have some sort of a digital solution to solve certain problems or to remove certain pain points, but it's difficult to implement. You could deploy the system, but they will not use it. Again, because of these systems that they have built, where they get personal benefits from the inefficiencies. So it is a challenge. And so I think in such situations, what I've seen, especially now, is the strong political will that's there from the government authorities, there, like the high level officials that are enforcing the use of digital systems. I'll tell you that even in the last State of the Nation address, the president actually gave a directive to say that all government services have to be digitized. So we are trying to be digital, which means that they have no choice. Like people have no choice. Like the workers have no choice, but to embrace this. So I think that's one thing. In terms of the privacy, we have a data protection act at the moment, which is there to protect people. I think the only thing that I'd say is lacking is awareness among the citizens, and I think that's an effort that the government is working towards, especially this year, to ensure that people understand what it means to them, and also even within the government ministries and departments where they also have to have the regulations based on the data that they handle.
And do you think that next generation of responsible GovTech builders are approaching those problems differently in any way? Are they bringing new ways of thinking and acting to public services with them?
I would say that the key thing is to ensure that this new generation has to understand that people come first. And I'm not sure if I would say this is a realization that we're just having, because before you'd see governments or even donors sometimes bringing in digital solutions to either communities or to in the government, and yet those solutions don't speak to their problems, don't speak to the pain points. But the key thing is to understand, to put people in the center and build systems around them. The technology doesn't come first, so that is key, and I think that's where we are going. That realization is there to ensure that we are not building systems for the sake of ticking a box or showing that we have the best technology and so forth, but to ensure that they are solving people's problems.
Absolutely, I agree. And would you think that a minister from another country, if they listened hypothetically or maybe really to the podcast that we're recording right now, and said afterwards, we really want to start building a digital government, but we don't know where to begin, what would be your recommendation on about 3 points maximum to start in the next 12 months? What to do best? What to invest?
So first of all, I don't know here if we're assuming that they already have already done a digital readiness assessment, because I think that's important to know where your country stands and where you as government stand in terms of regulation or policy, and also readiness to implement these digital services. And so that's the first thing, to make sure that you do your assessment and have proper insights. And then, secondly, I would say to identify the priority areas or priority sectors. So, based on what the government's priority sectors are. So, for example, Malawi, some of the priority sectors are agriculture, trade, mining. These are the sectors that you would have to look into and see what kind of problems they have, and make sure that this, if you're building a system, it's not duplicating or bringing in more work to the people, but rather solving a pinpoint. And the third one, I'd say, start small or in phases. Make sure that you're able to demonstrate that that system or that solution that you're bringing can actually be impactful, because people would trust what they see working. You wouldn't want to digitize the whole government at once, or bring digital solutions to all the ministries or departments, but rather focus on phased, or you have to take a phased approach. Make sure that you are able to deliver and also demonstrate results within the sector you're in, or the ministry you're in, or the department that you're in.
Thanks, Tuntufye. What about you, Oleksandr?
Yeah, I think that the points that Tuntufye like disclosed are really, really important. And what I would like to add up on this, on top of that, of course, the team that is around is super important. It's important to invest time to engage proper people that will solve problems, because you cannot do it just by yourself. Also, public support is super important. Yeah, political and public support. If you don't have a mandate to do these things, you should not be. You could not build a trust, and you will have very short time of your project. So to build and to gather this public support and preserve it throughout the time is another important thing. And yeah, as being a technical guy, I will put on the third to choose the right digital public infrastructure architecture, right? Because there is a lot of projects that ignore technology, and still it's important. But yeah, and you should get the knowledge. You should learn the lessons from other countries, get the best. Like, this GovTech is all about reusable components and reusable methodologies. So you can get a lot of things from other countries, and yeah, and create really good architecture for digital public infrastructure to scale it. But foundations should be created at the start.
And probably it would be good to mention that all of those practical points on which building blocks to use, what technologies are ahead right now, what are the best practices, and how to make sure that your team actually understands what's best and how to build that in the framework of your local requests, would probably send them off to a GovTech challenge like Women in GovTech, where you can build, where you can test, when you can share, and actually talk to professionals all over the world that are responsible for building exactly so same instruments in their countries or all over the world. I think that being able to partake in those challenges in any role as mentor or as mentee or program coordinators is very beneficial to everybody all around. So Tuntufye, Oleksandr, thank you so much for this conversation. It was really valuable to hear both Malawi and Ukraine perspectives on digital government infrastructure and how to build that. Nevertheless, those countries being so far away apart from each other, it's very much amazing to understand how connected all we are in the same face of the same challenges, and that we are all aiming to build systems that actually change and improve people's lives.
Yeah, and let women in GovTech challenge will be the biggest challenge in this year for us.
No, thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to share. And as I'm sharing, I'm also learning quite a lot through this challenge, because we are new. We are all on this journey to ensure that we are on the right path to digital transformation. So, having these tools, and I just remembered that one thing that we encourage government is to use open source tools, so you don't have to spend a lot of money, and also find yourself the government that is in vendor locked issues, because there has been a lot of such cases here in Malawi.
Definitely. And I'm sure that Kitsoft also benefited from the perspective of being part of GovTech initiative and definitely impacted why the instrument gone open source. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
And it was a wonderful conversation. Have a good one. This is Code the State, produced with the support of the International Telecommunication Union. If this conversation sparked something, follow the podcast and share it with someone working on digital government. See you next time.
Code the state.